Hi, I am The Writing is on the Wall. I'm a street poet and I was honoured to be invited to Nuart this year. The theme is Poetry is in the Streets, and I've been assisting with that by putting some poems up around the city, and today I did a house which is now the Poetry House here in the city. I can't remember the name of the street.
Little Belmont Street.
Little Belmont Street, yeah. But it was great, great fun. Up on a scaffy and whacking some words up.
Yeah, fantastic, really, just watching you work, to be honest with you, because you use a particular device that I've never really seen anywhere. So tell us about, how it is that you're putting these words actually up onto the wall.
It's a handheld printer in essence, and it's like an acetone ink. All it means is that, so I used to paste. I used to rip each line of the poem, and then I used to paste it. And obviously that takes time. With this machine, like yesterday, I hit like 20 spots in the city, which would have been impossible with the other method,
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit in terms of your poetry and in general, because it's Poetry on the Streets is Nuart this year, and your literal Instagram tag is The Writing on the Wall.
Yeah.
So you've been doing it a while. Tell us about how you started and.
Yeah, so I always wrote poetry. I was very fortunate that my great-grandmother taught me to read when I was like 3 years old. So I could read very early and enjoyed reading. Nothing deep. I wasn't overeducated anyway, but I loved words, and I always wrote poetry. And then I basically kind of experimented in bands and that kind of thing as I was. As I was growing up. Then life got in the way of the creative kind of stuff for a while. When I got married and had two wonderful kids, kind of had to deal with the more practical things of roofs on overheads and food on table and stuff. And then the pandemic happened, which put a stick in the great hamster wheel of life, and I didn't do anything for a while, and the words just came flooding back. Of which I was very receptive. A friend of mine said, your poetry is good. You should publish. And I was adverse to going into poetry books on coffee tables in middle class lounges that only get placed there for the nice cover and never get read. And I've always had a love of street art, so I decided to post them, to paste them on walls at scale in places where people don't necessarily encounter poetry, for the purpose of possibly changing, somebody walking past's day, or getting someone who's never been into poetry into, the idea of poetry.
So that's something that you started since the pandemic, though, actually putting it out into the public space.
Yeah.
Prior to that, and prior to your family, and prior you were doing sort of song lyrics and stuff. Was that?
Yeah, and I did kind of some stand-up way back in the day. I mean, they say, what's the difference between a poet and a pizza?
Pizza can feed you.
Oh, a pizza can feed a family of four.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and poetry couldn't do that when I had two young children. They're fully grown now. They're living in Australia, so it's my job's done in that regard. So this kind of time is about being a bit more expressive, and we live in a very dystopian time where the media, the mainstream media, is massively controlled by the state, and so what people are allowed to know is regulated. So the thing about hitting the streets is you can say what you want to say and say it as you want to say it, and it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, making marks on walls as a form of media, news and expression. And you can go in some of the dungeons of the 16 and 1700s, they're scattered with people's expressions, drawings, poems, writings. And I think that's a little bit about what Nuart is about this year, is about people making their mark and maybe saying something instead of it's just being visual.
So tell me about the time that you first decided to, to do exactly what you just described. Put your first piece up on a wall so that people could see it for themselves, experience themselves. What was going on there?
It was basically just working out what how the form would come together. So to start with, I cut each line of the poem out, pasted it on, and ripped it in situ. I mean, that's pretty
time intensive.
Right? Yeah, particularly when you're doing something it's probably illegal. So then it morphed a little bit because I learned that you couldn't spend 3.5 hours putting a poem up and not get nicked. So I'd pre-rip, and then I would pre-roll, and I would have the poem. I used to call them my little poetry bombs. So all the lines would be in order, little elastic band round it, find the spot, whack it up much quicker than previous. And then thanks to an artist friend of mine, Bob Zilla, he alerted me to this machine, and I was just like, well, that's a winner, for what I do. It has it can only, you use the city's patina for the canvas, but because it's black ink, you always have to be on a light canvas, which is the only full drawback with it, really. But then obviously on something that is a darker patina, I can use paste ups.
So just going around Aberdeen for this Nuart Festival, you've done the big white house on Little Belmont Street, which is like the statement piece, isn't it? But also you've been going around the streets and looking for spaces where you can just put your words, your poetry in sort of these inconspicuous spots where people can just, stumble across. They're not obvious, are they?
No, I mean, some of them are on Union Street and stuff, but bus stops are a great place for them because obviously people are just standing there on the glass of a bus stop. I mean, as I say, I got yesterday was my first day on the streets here, and I got 20 up. Today I've done the house. I'll probably do some this afternoon, but then I've got Thursday, Friday also. So I mean, for me, it's about coverage. So because they're not, like, a lot of the murals that are involved in this festival are huge and amazing, but mine is about coverage. It's about, if you like, pissing on as many lampposts as possible, so as that you can, you leave your trail behind.
And what about the sort of themes of the poetry that you're placing out onto the streets? What sort of things do you write about?
Okay, well, I mean, it's things that, as a poet I contemplate. There's obviously, there's politics, there's the state of capitalism generally, and death, obviously, which becomes us all. And I think that it's something that is a great thing to dive into when you're looking to express your thoughts on walking this land and living, and ultimately what happens after,
when we were at the house on Little Belmont Street, there was a lady that came up, and she seemed to have quite an emotional reaction, actually, a really positive emotional reaction to a couple of lines of text that you place out. It sort of really seemed to hit her quite deeply.
Yeah.
Do you get that? Do you find you get that sort of reaction sometimes? Or
it's really nice that when I'm doing it, and someone reacts like that, and it does happen. I mean, that one was, I am becoming not what I am. Not what I was yesterday, not what I am today. I am becoming me, and that resonated with her because of whatever circumstance she was going through, and obviously it's a bonus to interact with people while you're doing the work, and to get their understandings of it and their feedback, even if it's like, "Yeah, man, that's a load of shite." It doesn't really matter what they say, as long as they're interacting. That's the whole point of putting poetry out in places where poetry doesn't exist, is so people react to it. You're not looking for hearts and likes. You're looking for the reaction.
Yeah, and you're looking for sometimes the reaction that you can't quantify, isn't it? Because I think we were speaking yesterday, and you said actually the spots that you kind of prefer are really off the beaten track, where, you know, poetry just might not get to that population.
Yeah. So here in Aberdeen, you know, like the schemes and places where you know, you would hope that you could possibly change somebody's understanding of the written word, if it's there in front of them. I mean, obviously we are all enslaved to our phones, to the internet, and what should be, through the most incredible knowledge database available to man, mean that we move forward, you know, as a species, has actually just put a big full stop in it, hasn't it? You know, and we're all doom scrolling, and before we know it, we're buying cardigans in July, you know, because they're discounted. And I think we do live in the days of disaster capitalism. You know, there is an oversupply. The system only works with an undersupply. So at the moment, those who have multitudes are attempting to prop the system up however they can, particularly through war.
What I'm hearing there is because people might be not exposed to, you know, actual physical words on the street, and they're sort of more exposed to things that they're being fed directly through an algorithm, if you like. But if they come across your work, there's no algorithm involved in there.
No.
It's just boom, I'm seeing that, and I'm either taking something away from it or I'm not.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the thing is, what saddens me, you know, is the lack of the demise of education in this country. You know, I was educated in comprehensive school, and we had teachers who were really into what they were doing, and they weren't overstressed and they weren't overworked, and you know, they brought something to us that we would never have encountered otherwise. However, you know, what I say these days is, you know, you don't have to burn the books if you don't teach people to read them, and that's what's happening. The general knowledge of people coming out of education these days is far less wide than it was back in my day.
So what do you hope people will take away from this festival? You know, maybe they've spent a few days walking around the streets, they've come across a few of your pieces, they've come across some of the other works and things like that. You know, it's happening over a good few days is this festival, and your work is going to be prominent amongst it. So what do you hope people are going to take away from it?
Well, I mean, to be honest, you know, that one encounter with that lady earlier justifies all of the work that I'm putting in, because, you know, she, as you say, she said she had goosebumps and she resonated with it. So, you know, if some more of those happen, amazing. But I think it's just about being out there for people to encounter and to be interested in, should they wish. You know, it's not like placards, shouty megaphone. You know, it's there, it's subtle enough. It's in a place you wouldn't normally expect it, so if you were interested, you would stop. But equally, you could walk past and not see it. So, you know, it's adding to the patina of the city as well, you know, which obviously any great city like Aberdeen has its character from the street art within it. And obviously Aberdeen is very blessed to have had Nuart here for a decade or whatever. It has a real proliferation of the art. But also, if you look beyond the work that has been commissioned, there's loads of really interesting stuff around and about that's done by the people of Aberdeen themselves.
Great, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for coming in and chatting.